على بركة الله. نعم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبيه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فترحب بكم عمادة كلية اللغات والترجمة في جامعة الإمام محمد بن سعود الإسلامية في مناقشة أطروحة الدكتوراه عن بعد للطالبة سلام بنت أحمد السلامة من قسم اللغة الإنجليزية وآدابها في تخصص اللغويات التطبيقية، لمناقشة أطروحتها بعنوان مناقشة أثر التدريب في استراتيجيات التذكر والاستراتيجيات المعرفية في الاحتفاظ بمفردات اللغة الإنجليزية على المدى القصير والطويل عند المتعلمين السعوديين. وستستمع لعرضها وتناقشها لجنة الحكم على الرسالة التي أتشرف بالمشاركة فيها الدكتور خالد بن محمد أباالحسن، أستاذا مشاركا في الكلية ومقررا، ويناقشها من داخل الكلية الدكتور عثمان بن راشد السماري، الأستاذ المشارك في الكلية عضوا، ويناقشها من خارج الكلية الأستاذ الدكتور علي بن محمد الشهري، الأستاذ بجامعة الباحة عضوا. ويشارك معنا في حضور هذا اللقاء ضيوف من مختلف الجامعات والجهات الأخرى والمهتمين بالبحث العلمي وبموضوع هذه الرسالة، وبالطبع الأصدقاء والزملاء من برنامج الدكتوراه ممن يقومون بإعداد أطروحاتهم، فضلا عن أسرة الطالبة ومحبيها ممن يشاركون في حضور هذا اللقاء، ونرحب بهم. نبدأ على بركة الله بعرض تعده وتقدمه الباحثة، وأحيطكم علما بأن هذا اللقاء مسجل ويشارك فيه أعضاء اللجنة والمقدمة والمشرف فقط. نبدأ على بركة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، تفضلي.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Thank you, Dr. Khalid. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Today I'll be presenting my Ph.D. Thesis entitled Comparing the Effects of Memory and Cognitive Strategy Training on Saudi Learners' Short and Long-Term English Vocabulary Retention. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone attending this Viva, my friends, my family, my colleagues, and special thanks to my supervisor, Dr. Khalid Abaالحسن, and to the committee members, Dr. Uthman Ismari and Dr. Ali Shahri, for their time and effort. Okay. As a background, as we know, foreign language learners often forget newly learned words, and that successful language learners use a variety of language learning strategies. However, some learners may apply these strategies incorrectly. This is maybe because they lack the metacognitive knowledge on their appropriate use. This incorrect application of these strategies can be detrimental. Therefore, there is a need to further investigate language learning strategy training in the Saudi EFL learning settings. The problem addressed by my thesis emerged from three basic problems. Number one, complex nature of vocabulary. Number two, vocabulary attrition and forgetting. And number three, pedagogical challenges faced by Saudi EFL learners. These three problems had led the researchers to ask which language learning strategies are the most effective for vocabulary retention. And after further research, three main gaps in the literature have appeared. First, memory strategies and cognitive strategies are effective for retention, but they were not compared under training procedures. Secondly, the call to investigate the effectiveness of strategy instruction, and this call was by Saudi and international researchers. And thirdly, memory strategies are always among the least used strategies, while cognitive strategies are always among the most used strategies. So it's to be noted here that no research to date has compared the effects of memory strategies and cognitive strategies on word retention of Saudi FL learners after being trained in these strategies. So again, to address the problems set out so far, there are 4 questions. Question number 1, how do certain memory and cognitive strategies affect Saudi FL learners' short and long-term vocabulary retention with respect to reception and production? Number 2, which memory sub-strategies and cognitive sub-strategies have the greatest impact on short and long-term retention? Number 3, which memory sub-strategies and cognitive sub-strategies are the most frequently used by Saudi FL learners and which are seen as the most effective? These 3 questions are to address the first 2 gaps mentioned earlier. Question number 4, what are Saudi FL learners' general perceptions of memory vocabulary learning strategies and cognitive vocabulary learning strategies after undergoing the training program? This question is about Saudi perceptions, Saudi foreign language learners' perceptions, and it addresses the last gap mentioned above. For the aims of the study, 2 principal aims. Number 1, to compare the effect of certain memory and cognitive learning strategies on Saudi FL learners' short and long-term vocabulary retention for reception and production after the learners have taken part in a training program on the use of these strategies. Secondly, to investigate Saudi FL learners' use of and beliefs about these strategies. Before we move forward, it's important to pinpoint the theoretical framework of the current study. In fact, language learning, learning strategies, and memory intersect in the domain of cognitive psychology, or the science of how we think. Theories of language learning, memory, and cognitive processes contribute many implications to the current paper, and the findings were explained in the light of these theories as well. You might ask why memory strategies and cognitive strategies in particular. This actually for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that memory strategies and cognitive strategies were shown to be effective for retention, but they were not compared under training procedures. And number 2 is that cognitive strategies are always among the most used, while memory strategies are always among the least used by Saudi FL learners. The selection of sub-strategies, I selected grouping, association with personal experience, placing words in a storyline as memory strategies, and listening to new words, classroom note-taking, and repetition as cognitive strategies. As for the methodology, the study was based on mixed methods quasi-experimental design. This is because this design is thought to be best suited to capture the qualitative and quantitative data and to address the study questions. For the learning objectives that the current study tests, there are 4 meaning link, which was used as a type of knowledge, and the reception and production abilities as a level of mastery. So as a result, we have 4 areas of assessment: form recall, meaning recall, form recognition, and meaning recognition. And by recall here, I mean production, and by recognition, I mean reception. To recruit the participants for this study, I chose to look at Imam Muhammad bin Saud Islamic University, College of Languages and Translation. I used G-Power software to select my sample. It's a free power analysis program for a variety of statistical tests. The initial sample comprised 120 female students. As for instruments, firstly, I developed a self-report questionnaire to reveal the types of memory strategies and cognitive strategies employed by Saudi FL learners. Secondly, I designed a training program to train participants on the use of memory strategies and cognitive strategies. I used a pre-treatment test, which is a vocabulary size test by Bigler and Nation, 2007, and I built a post-treatment test to test short and long-term retention of words. And lastly, I developed the focus group interviews guide. For data analysis for the quantitative data, the post-treatment test was analyzed using paired and independent sample t-test, repeated measures ANOVA. For the questionnaire, it was analyzed through paired sample t-test, Pearson correlation coefficient, and general descriptive statistics.
Excuse me,
For
Salam.
the qualitative, yes.
Salam,
Yes,
are you flipping the presentation sheets or pages? Because I don't see it moving.
Can't you see the data analysis now, Doctor? Can you see?
I can see the cover page. Can you turn it into the presentation mode?
Yes, I turned it already.
Yeah, because I have a still image here.
Oh.
Yeah, Dr. Khalid, there is always a problem with sharing an app. It causes some kind of delay. So I understand.
ارسلي لي الملف على الواتساب attachment في الواتساب وانا بعرض من عندي.
Okay, but doctor, it will take time maybe. Can you do it now?
الواتساب عندك ما هو مربوط بالجهاز ها؟
No, it's not.
طيب وعلى الايميل؟
I can send it by email, doctor.
بليز ارسلي على عنوان الكلية علشان اعرضه للزملاء هنا.
Okay. So
وهذه مشكلة يعني خليني أيضا as you are doing this الآن تو بدأت الصورة تتحرك لكن خليها على حالة العرض عشان الكتابة تطلع واضحة.
Like this, doctor. Can you see now?
Yeah, بس maximize الإيمج.
It's not maximized, but can you see the data analysis now? Data analysis slide.
Data analysis طالع لنا مزبوط. طالع
So
لنا.
can we continue like this?
Yeah, sure. خلوني بس أنبه الشغلة يعني يبدو أن مناقشتنا اليوم قد تكون الأكبر جغرافيا لأننا يعني الدكتور عثمان وأنا دخلنا من الرياض والباحثة دخلت من إحدى دول الشام وسعادة الأستاذ الدكتور علي دخل من الباحة أود أن يدرك الجميع أن هناك إشكال في الاتصالات لن نسلم منه لكن هذا فضلا عن إشكالات بلاك بورد نفسه لكن لعل الأمور إن شاء الله تمشي وتسير على ما يرام بإذن الله. واصل.
Thank you, Doctor. So for the qualitative data, the focus group interviews were analyzed using thematic open and exile coding following Brown and Clark's 2006 phase guide to analyze the focus group interviews. As for the procedures, they were consisted of 3 phases. The pre-treatment phase. In the pre-treatment phase, I introduced the participants to the study by obtaining the consent forms, following clear and ethical procedures. Secondly, I implemented the pre-treatment test, which consisted of vocabulary size test to ensure homogeneity of participants and to select the target words. Thirdly, the participants had to fill out a self-report questionnaire which asked about their use and their rating of effectiveness of memory strategies and cognitive strategies. For the training program, each group received introduction on vocabulary learning strategies and training on the use of the assigned sub-strategies for each group. In the post-treatment phase, there was a post-treatment test that is composed of 2 identical tests, the short-term retention test applied immediately after a learning session and the long-term retention test applied 3 weeks later. I then administered the self-report questionnaire again to compare their use and effectiveness ratings after they had the training program. And lastly, during this phase, I conducted the semi-structured interviews in the form of focus groups to answer research question number 4, which was the qualitative part. Findings, the main findings of question 1 were both groups achieved higher scores on short-term retention test than on the long-term retention test. The two groups gave identical scores on short-term retention test, but the memory strategy group outperformed the cognitive strategy group on the long-term retention test. No significant difference was found between the three memory sub-strategies on the short-term retention test, but the difference was significant on the long-term retention test. The opposite was found for cognitive strategies. The scores of 4 areas of vocabulary assessment varied with each strategy. As we can see here in this table, for form recall, personal experience was the most, or had the most score, and listening was the least. For meaning recall, personal experience was the most, and note-taking was the least. For form recall, repetition the most, and note-taking the least. And for meaning recognition, grouping was the most, and listening was the least score. For question number 2, among the memory strategies, association with personal experience had the highest mean score for long-term retention, while placing words in a storyline scored slightly higher than the grouping strategy. For cognitive strategy, the most effective strategy for long-term retention was listening to new words and repetition with the same mean scores, followed by classroom note-taking. The main findings of question number 3, number 1 is that participants' use and evaluation of strategies did not differ significantly after they had the training program. And number 2, participants' use of cognitive strategies was higher than their use of memory strategies before and after the training program. For question number 4, the qualitative part, training does make difference in several key areas, such as general knowledge about language learning strategies, learning autonomy, and motivation. Also, we have 6 major types of beliefs. Beliefs about optimal strategies of learning vocabulary, beliefs about memory strategies, about cognitive strategies, about the need for training on strategies, about the efficiency of training, and about the factors affecting the use of vocabulary learning strategies. Theoretical and practical implications. Theoretically speaking, consistency with the number of theories in cognitive psychology, in that the more cognitive involvement in an activity, the more retention occurs. And this explains the superiority of memory strategies for long-term retention. Practically speaking, strategy training is most effective given specific baseline situations, like when we know the need of the students and their level, linguistic levels, and so on. Different factors affect the use and effectiveness of vocabulary learning strategies. There is a need for training, and also the pedagogical implications pertinent to the Saudi context. The original contribution of my thesis is number 1, to combine different fields of knowledge, cognitive psychology, memory and language retention, as well as vocabulary learning strategy and language learning strategy training, to measure the effect of memory and cognitive strategy training on 4 areas of word knowledge, to compare 2 major strategies, memory strategies and cognitive strategies, rather than comparing minor sub-strategies, to show novel pedagogical conclusions pertinent to the Saudi context, to contribute qualitatively in revealing, Saudi learners' tendency to use cognitive strategies more than memory strategies. Thank you for your listening and attention, and now I will leave the mic for my professors to hear from them.
شكرا سلام. If you can, okay, you did. أشكرك يا سلام على العرض الموجز والاستفادة من الوقت المتاح. والآن يتفضل سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور علي الشهري باستعراض الأفكار التي يريد تناولها في هذه المناقشة وطرح ما يراه من الأسئلة والملاحظات، آملا منك تدوين ما تسمعين في سجل لديك للأخذ به إن شاء الله بعد انتهاء المناقشة. تفضل يا أستاذ دكتور. والآن مع الدكتور علي الشهري، تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أولا أتقدم بالشكر لسعادتكم دكتور خالد، الدكتور عثمان، جامعة الإمام، متمثلة في كلية الترجمة. I'd like to thank you, candidate Salam, and thank the audience and the good support of your family. I find a lot of your family joining us, which is something we appreciate that. Really, I enjoy reading your dissertation, and there is nothing much to be said, but as usually, this is the policy of dissertations, and we have to shed lights on some points that support your dissertation and your research, and help you and other researchers in the future, to fill in some gaps if we find some of it. The title of the study, very, very interested, and I like it. The topic under investigating is interesting. It attempts to compare the effects of memory and cognitive strategy training on Saudi learners' short, long-term English vocabulary retention. The abstract is informative. However, it has been observed that the researcher did not refer to the implications, recommendations, and suggests further study. Therefore, my advice is to refer to implications drawn from the finding of the study, recommendations of the study, and suggest further studies. The introduction, I like, as I said, I enjoyed a lot of reading your dissertation, especially in the introduction. But my suggestion here that one of the gaps it might support you and help you, suggested the reader should be introduced to the EFL context of the study. I mean the English program taught in college under investigation, the study plan, and the common methods strategy followed in teaching the target language aspect vocabulary skill in question. And those ones which are suggested in course descriptions, I mean in your college. Statement of the study of the problem. Again, I suggested that you should also consider writing the statement of problem relation of the situation teaching and learning that being practiced in the context of the study college of translation in particular. This can be another impetus, calling for conducting the study, this study. I'd like if you may please go to page 30. Page 30.
Yes, thank you.
Paragraph 2, line 5. Line 5 from the top. You said here, some learning strategies have been found more effective for long-term retention or for either receptive or productive skills than others. For example, the keyword method is more effective for translation and respective language use while...
sorry, doctor, page 30?
Page 30, line 2 from the top.
Okay.
Start with some learning strategies. You can read it.
30. Okay, doctor, I have types of memory here in this page 30.
Dr. Ali, are you referring to the Word document or the PDF? Because the PDF.
No, the Word. I'm talking about the. As I told you, Dr. Khalid.
Yeah, the Word document would always change the page numbers. So the page numbers you would have would be different from mine and would be different from the researchers' document. Okay.
I get you. You know, anyway, my question here, you know, if yeah, my question, you said I'll read it for you and I'll send it to you. I read it. Some learner strategies have been found more effective for long-term retention or for either receptive or productive skills than other. For example, the keywords method is more effective for translation, receptive language use, while repetition is more effective for production of vocabulary. You said some learning strategies. My question here, you know, how do you come to such finding without any reference here? And I listened to your introduction, hoping, you know, that you may shed light on some of these studies has been, so I couldn't find it. Yeah, you mentioned that in your literature review, but here, you know, it's, and in the same page also, in the same paragraph, you said studies report that combined strategies are more effective than using individual strategies. So here, it's my suggestion required, you know, you add here these strategies or studies.
Yes.
In chapter methodology chapter, it is good for me, although you use, you know, a lot of, but I'd like, you know, I wish you explain that, you give me just, you know, 1 minute why you choose mixed methods here, research design. I find it a little bit, you know, for me to, you did not shed light, you know, enough for me to, why you use mixed.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I chose this design actually for 2 reasons. First, because we need kind of qualitative data to support the treatment, or the data gained from the treatment, the qualitative data. This is the first reason. The second thing is the exigencies of the study questions themselves. If you can see, question number 1 and 2 and 3 require a kind of quantitative data, and question number 4 required qualitative data.
Thank you.
Yes.
Although, you know, it seems you have very good, you know, well design of tables and charts. Although, you know, I'm mostly, I like the quantitative, qualitative, but in quantitative area, ANOVA and this stuff, you know, you did it very well. Thank you for that. And analysis, all in all, the analysis and discussion were presented, you know, very well to me. I like it. Here, you said data analysis, and I prefer under data analysis, you could write, you know, result and discussion here. But I found it has observed that the researcher incorporated the discussion of the study findings in the conclusion.
Yes.
My suggestion here that the researcher presents here results and discuss them with the reference to the previous studies in this chapter here. I mean, chapter 4. Instead, you know, you discuss that chapter 5.
Yes.
We used to in applied linguistics to be discussed here in chapter 4. In conclusion, you know, as I said, my suggestion, you should mention and come up with that. Finally, and I don't want to pass my time, but here in general I like your references, but I just find it's not updated. I found only 2 in 2017, which means I'm sure you submitted your dissertation to, maybe late to 2020. So at least you have something in 2020 or 2019, But the newest references in your dissertation were 2 in 2017. In conclusion, right. As I said, I enjoyed reading this, and really you fill in the gap here. This is what we are looking for as a researcher here. We want to find the researcher to fill in the gap, what we need in our Saudi learners and in research in general. Dr. Khalid, Dr. Ahmad, thank you, and thank you, Salma. You gave me this opportunity to be in this community with Dr. Khalid. Thank you, Dr. Khalid.
Thank you, Prof. And I'd like to respond on the last part in which Professor Ali indicated a point that we both, Salam and I, were concerned about, which is the committee's opinion about the references, but we have some kind of justification. The researcher has been outside the country with her family on a diplomatic mission, and the pandemic caused a lot of chaos that caused her to go back and forth, evacuated from the spot where she was with her family, and that caused a tremendous delay on her defense. But her submission was in fact back in 2019, and her work was up to date then, because she had in fact finished working with the manuscript early 2019. Maybe this responds a little bit to your concern with how much outdated the reference list could be, and I totally agree with you. In fact, we were afraid you would raise this issue.
Thank you, Dr.
You got a point we had a concern with. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Yes, Dr. Ali, tafadhal.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning that we are covering a huge area, and this is really the benefits of technology. I remember the 9/11. I stopped here and stuck here for visa more than 9 months, trying to get back and for my defense. So you are lucky,
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. She is lucky she had an examiner who had a similar experience. Okay, now we have Dr. Uthman Ismari. Without further ado, Dr. Uthman, tafadhal.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum.
I would like to thank you, Dr. Khalid, for nominating me to be in this panel, and actually to serve on the panel to examine a thesis of such a quality. I'd like to thank also the researcher for the tremendous effort she put into this research. She has chosen a very difficult topic and managed to do it in one piece, which is a good thing. Not many people can say that about their work. I really enjoyed reading your dissertation, even though the topic itself is very hard. She tried to cover a lot of areas in learning strategies and vocabulary learning strategies, and this would take a lot of effort and a lot of also skill. I didn't really. The only comment I had about the abstract, she did the abstract well. I agree with Dr. Ali that she could have done it better, but she had only minor issues. Okay, one thing that I had a question about when I was reading the abstract was she analyzed. She said that she coded the interviews. Okay, the qualitative data using the manual, open, and the axial. Okay, coding. What does he mean by this? Salam, Salam. Sorry,
Yes.
are you there? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
what do you mean by the open manual, open coding? Okay. Out of curiosity, it's not a major issue anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the open coding, we try to break the data into discrete units and put labels for them. In the exile one, we try to connect these, to make connections.
Okay, yeah, but do you need the word manual? That's it, because it gives, you know, do you need the word manual itself?
Manual means that I didn't do it with a kind of program or software or something like this.
Yeah, you could say that the data was coded, yeah, you know, following a specific procedure and so on. But this would the fact that you mentioned it twice and you maybe even 3 times, I think, but you didn't specify what is it that you meant. As I said, it's a very minor one. In fact, you didn't even have to say anything about it. But I know when you talk about coding, usually you need to say how each theme was extracted briefly. You didn't really have to get into detail. And you could have done it yourself. You could have involved another researcher, an independent one, just to make sure that you know the researcher bias is removed. Okay, but as I said, this is a question. I thought it was basically something that I should know about. But if it's you know what you described, I don't think you could have you needed to say if it was manual or if it was something else. I know you'd have to do it yourself, and there isn't a machine can't help you with coding. So okay, this is something that I really liked your translation, by the way, of the abstract. Not many people can say this about their work. You really did well. Okay, and you the only word I would change أظهرت البيانات النوعية دليلا. I'm sure this is a very minor one, but أظهرت دليلا قدمت, I think, would be a better one. I don't like to comment to the translation, yes, but this one was something that I had to comment on. If you could, the only thing, okay, the only thing that I didn't like about your work, okay, and not your work specifically, but what Schmidt and his colleagues was naming repetition. I mean, was actually using or classifying the repetition strategy as actually a cognitive one.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. You didn't question this, so I had to raise this point because I didn't think repetition is a good strategy anyway. I know we do that a lot when we are trying to learn something, but the goal is never to repeat. The goal is to try something out, to probably focus. We always focusing on something else. Are you following? If I'm, for example, if I'm reading an ayah, for example, and I want to memorize it, every time I repeat it, I'm always going to be focusing on a different part of the verse or something like that. But it's never, the goal is never a repetition for the sake of repeating something. So Schmidt could have either called it exposure, seeking exposure, more exposure or something, because this is actually what we're doing. And this is why it's working. Because every time we're seeing the word, we're always exposing ourselves to some kind of input, right? This input would help us acquire the word faster and better and longer, etc.
Yes.
So that's always the goal. It's never repeating. The goal is never to repeat something for the sake of repetition. It's always done for something else. It's always done for a specific purpose. Schmidt didn't really seem to be bothered by this, which is really weird. You didn't seem to be bothered also, which was a bit weird. All right. Again, this is something to think about. Do not change anything. But I would really like, if I can suggest some, is just to encourage you to have a second. To examine it more carefully and see if there is, if you can question this part and probably raise a question. But I mean, I'm sure what the learners were doing were never repeating. In your case, when you were doing the study, they were clearly doing something else, not repeating something for the sake of repetition. So I would really like to see, to get you to think about it. That's all. All right. You on page number 4, you mentioned some. I'm talking about the PDF version. So the sequence of pages should be the same for us. All right.
Yes.
So page number 4, you said you mentioned many reasons for why vocabulary deserves to be studied. I agree. In fact, you mentioned a lot of good reasons. Okay, so I have no problem with this, but there is one thing that you mentioned, you forgot to mention. Again, not your problem. It's a problem in the literature. They always one key difference between vocabulary and grammar and learning grammar. The one striking difference is that words tend to acquire new meanings almost all the time. This you can't say that about grammar. So, for example, the word call you used to mean something, but now you could use the word call to mean decision. Okay, it's your call, something like that, right? But I mean, someone who is not always exposed to context in which the word would have this meaning, or actually in which this meaning is used, and they would not know that this is a possible meaning for it. So so words do acquire new meanings all the time, be it in Arabic or English. So just to assume that taking a course in 19 or 2010 or something would be enough to acquire a lot of words in English, you would need to think again about your approach, because it's clearly not going to work. Words do change all the time. So if we do not use the right strategies, if you're not always exposed to input, I doubt that anyone would be able to survive. Okay. So this is one major issue that you would need, I think, to think about adding, because no one probably, many of the researchers did not seem to be interested or aware of this. Okay, so if you could turn to page page 13, right?
13.
Yes, you said that you were explaining their theory, I think. They view learners as agents who participate actively and consciously, etc., right? I'm referring to the first paragraph at the top of the page. Page 13.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You were here referring to Ertmer and Newby. Okay. And they were so they were saying that they are agents who participate actively and so on. So, but is this what is happening with more? Is this assumption valid for for what actually learners do in many classrooms? They're supposed to be active and so on, and they should be. But is this the case in many EFL classrooms? Are they always active?
It's not always the case, but we are helping them to be.
I know. I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming a different party actually here. I'm blaming teachers. So, if the learners are not active, it's not your work to blame, but either the textbooks writers or teachers. When learners are not, or learners later, but I would blame teachers first, because they do not encourage learners to be involved. They're not giving them tasks that would force them to be involved. Okay, so they're not using the methodology as Dr. Khalid said. I think one of your the works that you referred to. Yeah, he said that they're using some teachers are using outdated methodology, etc. Yeah, so this might be the reason. Also, okay. Okay. Okay, your research. I had a comment about this. What does your research about? Were they involved? I mean, the learners, because you spent a few weeks with them. Were they involved? Were they actively involved in your classroom?
Yes, actually, they liked the topic.
Okay, good. I just wanted yeah. So you could comment on the validity of their, because they didn't comment on their theory. So you could comment that this was the case in my research, but your research is different. You encourage them, you force them actually to be involved. So
yes.
All right. So I agree with the cognitive theory part, but I'm just going to go more quickly. Yeah, you talked about on page 31. You talked about the involvement load hypotheses, right?
Yes.
On page 31 in the middle, the paragraph in the middle. But this is the only, I think, mention of this theory. Does it have any? Is it related to your work, to your study?
Yes, it's
Okay,
related.
I know, but you did not comment on how it's related to your findings, or right?
I commented in the last chapter.
Yeah, but you could. I mean, I'm interested in your input as to how this theory or hypothesis would relate to your work. Would it help? I mean, would it help explain something better, or yeah? So this is something to look into, because it seems to be interesting. I really like the theory. It seems to be. It could actually help you. Yeah, it could help you with to explain some of the findings that of your work. Yeah, the one thing that I noticed about your work, you had something like 8 paragraphs that are either 1-sentence paragraphs or 2-sentence paragraphs. Mostly 1-sentence paragraph. I'm not really sure. I always blame writers for. Now, there is actually a good reason for this, because a paragraph would require, in English, would require a topic sentence and a few supporting sentences. So in this case, it's not possible to have any of these. So you would need to connect this with the previous one, or join these 1-sentence paragraphs with the previous paragraphs. Yeah. On page 46, I had a question about the repetition. We talked about this, so I'm not going to get into this. You need just going. All right. So you need to question or to find a better label, or to suggest a better label for it. Be it, for example, exposure or something, seeking more exposure or more opportunities or something like that. Just think about it, and you would need to get your Dr. Khalid's also approval, because he's it will be ultimately you and your supervisor who decide to keep this word or remove it. All right. But all right. So yeah, you mentioned many studies, a few studies at the on pages what? Okay, I think 77, 60 or 71. You were talking about the reviewing the literature. Okay, especially the part about similar studies. Yes. Okay, key similar studies or something like that. Okay, so my point is you reviewed a lot of studies, but one thing that you failed to mention is how would these studies relate to work, and more importantly, what were the problems with these studies? Yes, that would encourage you to think of a study like yours or to conduct a study like yours. So what was the gap? What were the gaps in their work, if any?
Actually, I compared these studies while I'm talking or writing about them. I was comparing them to my study.
Yeah, you mentioned that you used the same, for example, procedure, used something, but you did not say their studies were good, but they failed to cover this. It's just like you said, they did not deal with both memory strategies and cognitive strategies. They didn't train, new training was tried out, etc. Something like that, right? I'm trying to help you. Basically, yeah, say something about the gaps that they actually left uncovered or actually undiscussed or investigated. So you need to, I think, find holes basically in their work and try to say, well, clearly there is a need not for a study to focus not only on this part but also on so many parts. Okay, just like you did. Okay, all right. So on page 90, this is a bit weird. You had you were saying that about 90 students. I'm sure you would remember this. You did not. I do not really have to specify the page. You said, in addition, on page 90. Okay, about 99 students participated. Why would you use the word about when you mentioned that the in the table? That you knew that it was 99 and it was 30, not so. Why would you use the word about?
Yes.
When you're actually sure of the number, the exact number. All right. Another on page 92, you had another one sentence paragraph. Okay, so it's something to think about. Right. Okay. On page, yeah, I had another comment about the manual coding on page 115. I'm not going to get into this. All right. But did you do the coding yourself, or you had you involved an independent coder?
No, me, doctor.
Okay. All right. You could do that, but usually involving another coder can and specifying the rate of agreement would also remove some of the. But your work is huge, so I don't think you had any time left to involve another coder. Yes. Okay. Okay, you probably might find my comment boring, but when you, if you could go to page 235, right?
235, that's it.
235. I know this is in the appendixes, I think. Yeah. So You were talking about here what strategy. I mean, you okay, the association. Okay. You were talking about the word download, I think, here, right?
Sorry, doctor, I didn't.
235. 235.
235. Okay, just 1 minute.
235. Yeah, you were talking here about the word download, right? And you were thinking of a word or to link it with, right?
Yes.
To remind. Yeah. Okay. Well, here the example you chose. I mean, was this example chosen by you or by someone else?
No, by me, doctor. Yes,
I can give you at least three better examples, because this is a stretch. I mean, to think about Lodo and
yes, it was.
Okay, a much better.
Yes, I know, doctor, but it was popular among
yeah,
students.
I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's not the best. You're actually confusing the students more. Okay, the only thing that I would think here, I would link it with one of the many download apps. Okay, I mean, for example, how many download apps would many or managers would many students be using? I know for myself, I would be using the internet download managers almost all the time, and internet download manager would have the word download in the middle.
Yes, yes.
So I would always anyone would be having I mean, remember the word download and what it means would have to be what? I don't want to say an idiot, but would have to find it very hard to not remember it, because of the many times he would have to use it, or he would always see the word download everywhere around him. One clear example would be download managers around. I mean, the many download managers around. I happen to use the word the internet download manager, or IDM for short, but you could be using another one and so on. But here, I mean, there is a clear example, so you would need to change it, because many people would, many teachers would probably be inspired by some of your work. Another example that was, I think, a poor attempt on your part. Again, I'm not blaming you, because I have the in hindsight, I have the more time than you did when you were thinking about your work. But so okay, the reason I'm thinking better is because probably I had more time than you. So the word all right. Also, the link was not strong between perfume and Paris. I didn't really see the link. Again, not a major problem, but still. Yeah. I mean, you only need an example. Use an example when it shows actually that it's a strong link. That would be hard to miss. Here, I didn't really see the link between Paris, being in Paris, or traveling to Paris. Okay, and the word perfume. Okay, so inspire and ilham and so on. I'm not really sure. The link was not such a good one too.
It should be weird, actually, doctor.
Yeah, I know I knew you would find it weird, but still, because ilham is in Arabic and inspire would be in English. This one would be a noun. The other one would be a verb. Yeah, you would have to think about of something else, a better link. Okay, but it's really hard sometimes to think of a link. That's why many students would have a hard time being involved, because the teachers use some of the poorest links, or textbook writers. So either use a good example, a very effective example, or do not use one. So my suggestion, either to drop this part or think of better examples.
Actually, these were only examples.
Yeah, I can help you, but the download manager would be a different example. But perfume, I'm not really sure. You either think of a shape to remind you of a specific. I think because most perfume bottles would have a specific shape or smell or something. So either you find a link with it, or just drop the word.
Yes.
Yeah, or just find some other example. Because you didn't really have to include this in the appendixes. I mean, I'm sure you you know, you had a good, the readers would trust you, so you didn't really have to use this example in particular, or just use it, the download example or something, only the clearest examples of all.
Yes.
But then, those the words with weaker links, you should just drop them. All right, that's all the comments that we had about your work. As I said, I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed your work. I would really like forward to seeing some more of your work in the future. Again, I would give the floor back to Dr. Khalid to continue with the. Hello, Dr. Khalid.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ahmad.
You're welcome. Dr. Khalid, I'm done. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ahmad.
You're almost okay.
I will stop sharing here. Thank you so much. The discussion, as you can see, Salam has added a lot of points for you to consider, to go over and improve. The questions raised to you raise awareness of the aspects in your dissertation that need more attention. I hope that you mark that following the discussion. The points I have for you have already been reflected in your work. I would like to assure the committee and everybody in the room with us of the following points. First of all, Salam's work has been run on Authenticate system. Authenticate is a brand name of a service to check the document for plagiarism and for safety of the work. The dissertation manuscript has been run on the system, and the system rendered a normal percentage, which reflects a list of points that I went over one by one, and I found them all relevant to a very important aspect, which is the APA style manual. If you fail to use a quotation somewhere, I mean a quotation mark somewhere, the system considers that part plagiarized. Although you have the author and the citation listed, but the system would consider that a form or a type of plagiarism because of that missing quotation mark. Also, the system, which is owned by Turnitin, allows researchers to find out the source from which the part was quoted. So I double-checked every part, and I found the document safe and clean and totally full of integrity. There is no quotation that wasn't attributed to its author. The other aspect is the amount of work that we put together on this document to make sure that it covers the previous studies. And Dr. Asmari has just raised questions on the similar studies. I would like you, Salam, to consider those notes. Updating your references, as Professor Ali Shihri has raised, is another important point for you to consider. And we will be working on that, inshallah, in the near future. Now, the committee would like to get together to discuss and deliberate on the results of this discussion. Please mute your phones, and I will be calling the committee members on the phone on a three-way call. Thank you. أنتظر عودة الدكتور عثمان إلى اللجنة.
تمام.
جميل. معنا يا سلام.
نعم دكتور، تفضل.
جميل. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. دعوني أولا أبعث ببعض الرسائل التي أرى من المهم إرسالها في مثل هذا الوقت، وبعد ذلك نعلن النتيجة ولعل الباحثة تتحمل قليلا. أود الحقيقة أن أسجل شكري وتقديري للأستاذ عبد الله الرميح زوج الطالبة الذي فتح فرعا لوكالة التمكين بوزارة الموارد البشرية في بيته ليمكن زوجته من إنجاز عملها بالصورة التي وصلت إليه، وهي صورة جميلة من الدعم الذي ننتظره من كل زوج وأب وأخ تتابع زوجته أو ابنته دراستها، وبمثل هذا الدعم نحقق طموحاتنا وطموحات أبنائنا في بناء الهيكل الأكاديمي والإداري لمؤسساتنا. فأقدم له جزيل الشكر على ما لقيته الباحثة من دعم خلال فترة عملها. كما أرحب وأحيي الحضور جميعا الذين شاركون هذا اليوم من الباحثين والباحثات المهتمين بموضوع هذه الرسالة، وعلى رأسهم عبد العزيز ومحمد وأحمد وإلهام ولولوة ورغد السلامة، الذين يشكل حضورهم دعما كبيرا للباحثة ويمثل تكاتفا ننتظره من أبنائنا وبناتنا وإخوتنا وأخواتنا في مثل هذه الموضوعات. أنتقل الآن إلى إعلان النتيجة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. إنه في يوم الخميس 19 من شهر شعبان من عام 1442 للهجرة، الموافق للأول من شهر إبريل من عام 2021 للميلاد، اجتمعت اللجنة المشكلة بقرار من مجلس قسم اللغة الإنجليزية وآدابها بكلية اللغات والترجمة، وموافقة من عمادة الدراسات العليا بجامعة الإمام محمد بن سعود الإسلامية، والمؤلفة من كل من الدكتور خالد بن محمد أباالحسن الأستاذ المشارك بالكلية مقررا، والأستاذ الدكتور علي بن محمد الشهري الأستاذ الدكتور في جامعة الباحة عضوا من خارج الكلية، والدكتور عثمان بن راشد السماري الأستاذ المشارك بالكلية عضوا من داخل الكلية لمناقشة رسالة الدكتوراه المقدمة إلى القسم من الطالبة سلام بنت أحمد السلامة بعنوان مقارنة أثر التدريب في استراتيجيات التذكر والاستراتيجيات المعرفية في الاحتفاظ بمفردات اللغة الإنجليزية على المدى القصير والطويل عند المتعلمين السعوديين, comparing the effects of memory and cognitive strategy training on Saudi learners' short and long-term English vocabulary retention. وبعد مناقشة علنية خلت اللجنة لمداولة الرأي حول ما تستحقه الرسالة، وأوصت بقبول الرسالة بتقدير ممتاز ومعدل A+، واللجنة إذ توصي بذلك فإنها تسأل الله تعالى للطالبة العون والتوفيق والسداد، وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. ألف مبروك دكتور سلام.
الحمد لله، الله يبارك فيك يا دكتور.
مبروك ماما، مبروك مبروك ماما، مبروك.
ما شاء الله ما شاء الله، الله يبارك فيكم جميعا. أسأل الله لك التوفيق. كلمة لأعضاء اللجنة ثم نعود للدكتورة سلام. تفضل دكتور علي.
ألف مبروك دكتورة، وحقيقة ألف مبروك للي باركوا لك، لأنهم صراحة هم أضافوا للمناقشة رونق جيد ألف مبروك والله ينفع بك إن شاء الله. وحقيقة أنا أقولها بكل حق والله، وأنا يمكن في المناقشة الإخوان أثابهم أثنوا واستفدنا. أنا والله تعلمت من هذه الرسالة أشياء. الله يعطيك العافية، وهذا هو الهدف. ألف مبروك.
الله يجزاك لنا يا رب دكتور، نتعلم منكم.
الله يعطيك. دكتور عثمان.
ألف مبروك دكتور سلام.
الله يبارك
مثل ما قلت لك أنا يعني أعجبت ببحثك وبالجهد الكبير الذي بذلتيه، فكتب الله أجرك ووفقك إن شاء الله في قادم الأيام.
الله يجزاك خير يا رب. آمين جميعا.
فالله يوفقك. Keep up the good work.
إن شاء الله بإذن الله. الله يجزاك.
تفضلي سلام.
دكتور خالد شكرا لك.
بارك الله فيك. بارك الله فيك. طيب أعتقد نحن هنا انتهينا. أسأل الله للجميع التوفيق والسداد، ونترككم في رعاية الله تعالى، متمنين للجميع نهاية أسبوع جميلة، وأسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى للجميع التوفيق والسداد، وأدركتم إن شاء الله هذا الشهر المبارك، وأعانكم الله على صيامه وقيامه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في أمان الله.
وعليكم السلام.
عليكم السلام وفي أمان الله، وشكرا لكم جميعا.
حياكم الله.